Hello, I am JP, also known as Sakura Hertz, and in this video I am going to give 5 more tips on how to make your tracks flow better. So, let's get right to it. So, you may have noticed that the tips I gave in the first video were a bit more basic, and in this one we will get into some more advanced tips. So tip number 1 is to add, remove, or change elements in unexpected places or moments. Because a lot of times we make music in that kind of 8-bar loop structure that is very common, as in you introduce a new element or you make changes every 8 bars. And it is a tried and true method and it is known to work, but your track can also get a bit predictable if you only make changes during those moments. So it can be a good idea to introduce elements or remove or changing things up in moments that aren't necessarily tied to those 8-bar blocks. It may make your track feel a lot more natural. Tip number 2 is to blur the distinction between different sections. So this may work better for some tracks than others. In some tracks you may want to make the different sections sound very distinct from one another. But what can also be a good idea is to make this transition a bit more natural, and I guess a good example of how to do it is like in most tracks you will have the track go straight from the drop to the break like this. And so there, as you can see, it's a very clear distinction. You have got the bass, the kick, the snare going in the drop synths, it's very heavy, and then suddenly there's a white noise transition and everything is quiet for a while and you know you're in the break. But what some tracks do is to, when the drop ends, you keep the beat going like this. And with this, you know that you are no longer in the drop. The energy has gone down a bit, but it's not so obvious as the other example. Now, tip number 3 is for those songs where you want to have those very well-defined sections, or perhaps you want to make a very abrupt or sudden change in the vibe of the song, like you suddenly turn it into a completely different thing. And the tips I give if you're making this style, obviously the previous tip won't work in this case. So what you would want to do to keep the transition a bit smoother, even though the parts are so different, is to either keep one element in common between those different parts. So let's say you have a very chill part and then suddenly you go into an aggressive drop. So like you're at a chill and melodic part and you have this arpeggio going in the background. And then you change into this very hard drop, very aggressive, but you can keep that arpeggio going in the background so that the transition isn't as jarring as it would be otherwise. And of course, this is just an example, you can do it with all kinds of elements. And another thing you can do is to foreshadow the upcoming mood change. And this is something I did in my track Let's Rock. It is a very happy song, very cutesy, kawaii future bass song. But in the middle there is one heavy hybrid trap drop, and what I did was give a little indication of what was about to come so that when the hard drop hits it doesn't feel so out of place and it doesn't feel so unexpected. I mean, it is unexpected, but you knew something different were coming. Tip number 4 is something that I actually learned from playing the piano instead of producing, and it is the final chord tip, which is something you may want to do when transitioning from the drop into the break. And I noticed that while playing the piano, let's suppose I was at the chorus of a song and I was playing like with very heavy dynamics, and then I went to the quieter part, to the verse, and I would switch to a quieter dynamic. And so what I would do is play one final chord with that very hard dynamic, and it is the first chord of the verse. So this helps to make the transition a little bit more subtler. And what you can do in this case is to use a synth from the drop as the first chord in the break. So I will show you an example of what it sounds without this. So as you see, the drop ends, it's just very abrupt. And then with this trick, so as you can see, the first chord that it plays after the drop ends is still a chord from the drop, and this helps to ease into the break a little. And tip number 5 is something that is called fade to gray, as defined by Production Music Live. I don't know if there is any other way to call it, but this is what I've seen it called. Overall, it is a mixture of delay, reverb, and high pass or low pass. You can make it to ease your transitions and make it flow a bit better. So this is what it sounds like. And now there are a lot of ways to do this. You can use just automating some filters and some reverb. You can use plugins like Endless Mile. You use just a little bit of it. This is my secret trick that I use in some tracks. You use just a little bit of Endless Mile on the master track. You automate it during the transitions, like into the drop and out of the drop into the break, right? And also, if I'm not mistaken, Production Music Live has made an effects rack for Ableton, so if you use Ableton you can download that from them. But since I use FL, I just prefer to use Endless Mile. It sounds the way that I want it to sound, and it works really great to make the transition. And one of the reasons that this works so great is that by automating just a small bit of reverb, you are making some of the elements bleed into the next section. So instead of, say, you have a synthesizer or a drum in the drop or in one section of your song, and instead of them completely fading out, you are bleeding a bit of them into the next section. So that's it. I hope this video was helpful. I hope you were able to learn something from it, and make sure to leave a comment, like, subscribe, and send it to your friends, to your producer friends, right? So yeah, see you guys next time. Love me some coffee.